Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We play local, unsigned and or independent music. And we also head over to the Ilk Shed to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for a weekly album review. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me an email on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anyone with MP3s they'd like to share, anyone who's got arts news, or anyone who would be a good guest on the show. So, you can also find us on Facebook, actually, if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, and you can find us, we're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, we're repeated here on Monday nights, we're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. My cat has just come up and sat right in front of me. Hi Biggie, are you saying hello to the good people of Wickham? Yes you are, yes, who's a good boy? That's my cat voice. I also have a radio voice, a telephone voice, and just my voice, although it's all suffering at the moment, because I've got hay fever, so please bear with me today. So, we would normally head over to the Rhylight Zone at this point. However, with this week's guest, we had such fun chatting that the interview went on for like 35 minutes. So we're going to skip the Rhylight Zone so we can squeeze more interview in. And instead, we're going to listen to a little bit of music. So this is Andrew Cobain with Stars, and he is looking for some musicians to put together a full band. I can't remember his details off the top of my head, so find me on Facebook, searching The Art Show on Wickham Sound, or email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk, and I'll make sure I put you in touch with him. This is Stars by Andrew Cobain.
I want to know where we all go, how we find out what it's about, and will it be? Because it seems that they are gonna get to you. Am I alone? And do I know? Left behind? Will I find a better way? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I love the way you make me feel when I'm behind the wheel. Do you think that you're some kind of star? I wish that I could be like you. I wish that I was sure. Do you think that this is some kind of lie? I'm not alone, everyone knows we see through how you do, and I guess it's for the best that you don't care either way. Fighting for air, are you scared? Look around, you're surrounded by the people, and they look just like you. I love the way you make me feel when I'm behind the wheel. Do you think that you're some kind of star? I wish that I could be like you. I wish that I was sure. Do you think that this is some kind of lie? And I know you. Do you know me? I don't know what it is they see. I turn the knife, I turn it twice. Can you see the blood pouring from me? Sure, do you think that this is some kind of lie?
I've been wandering around the house all night, wondering what the hell to do. And I'm trying to concentrate, but all I can think of is you. Well, the phone don't ring 'cause my friends ain't home. Tired of being all alone. Got the TV on 'cause the radio's playing songs that remind me of you. Baby, when you're gone, I realize I'm in love. Days go on, and the nights just seem so long. Even food don't taste that good.
Drink ain't doing what it should.
Things just seem so wrong. Baby, when you're gone, I keep driving up and down these streets, trying to find somewhere to go. I'm looking for a familiar face, but there's no one I know. This is torture.
This is pain. I think I'm gonna go insane.
I hope you're coming back real soon, 'cause I don't know what to do. Baby, when you're gone, I realize I'm in love. Days go on, and the nights just seem so long. Even food don't taste that good.
Drink ain't doing what it should.
Things just seem so wrong. Baby, when you're gone. Baby, when you're gone.
When you're gone,
I realize I'm in love.
I'm in love.
Days go on,
They go on,
and the nights just seem so long. Even food don't taste that good.
Drink ain't doing what it should.
Things just seem so wrong. Baby, when you're gone. Yeah, things just seem so wrong. Baby, when you're gone.
That was a cover of When You're Gone by Bryan Adams and Mel C by Grace Note. Before that we had Stars by Andrew Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined by this week's guest, who is none other than editor and writer extraordinaire Cori Rupe. Cori and I also work together for a client. We offer some coaching sort of sessions to writers, and she's just a fascinating person, as you will see when the interview unfolds. So let's head over and start chatting to Cori. So the first question is one I ask everybody, which is, what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Well, so which one? Because I'm a professional editor. I'm also writing historical fiction novels at the moment. So do you want edited, book research, or pleasure?
We could do all three.
All right, well, the last book I edited was a lovely and heartwarming how-to guide on how to get over the loss of a pet. The last book I researched is called Death at Buffalo Creek. It's for a historical fiction that I'm writing. It's by Tom Nugent. And if you ever have time, it will both change your life and devastate you. And then for pleasure, it was Fred Chappell's I Am One of You Forever. He's an Appalachian author, and it is the tale of a boy growing up in the 40s in North Carolina, interspersed with magical realism, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. That's quite the range that you got there.
Well, it's mostly Appalachian literature, believe it or
Yeah.
not, because Death at Buffalo Creek is Appalachian lit. because I am Appalachian and it is the core of my essence and being. And I seem to be one of the few people in the world who cares about the literature that comes out of this place.
Yeah. Cool. And you mentioned editing, and obviously that's one of the main things I want to talk to you about, although again you do writing as well. But I thought it'd be really good to get you to go over what are the different types of editing and where do they come into play?
Ooh, okay. I guess we can stick to the basics. The basic four are developmental, line, copy, and proofreading. So developmental editing is kind of when you go into a manuscript. A lot of people actually say that nonfiction doesn't require developmental editing, and I vehemently disagree. But it's where you come into a manuscript and you look for places where it doesn't make sense, it's lacking, there are plot holes, especially in nonfiction, which is my specialty. I like to show people that you need to put somebody in your shoes in a nonfiction story, because I don't care really how your Tuesday was unless I can stand in your Tuesday. And so, in my opinion, developmental editing is the act of taking an author and saying, show me where you were, show me what you smelled, what it looked like, how you felt. And then, don't just tell me I was sad. I want to feel your hands shake. I want to feel the hole in your chest. And I want to see how the lighting really turned gray in your eyes. So developmental editing takes that and kind of just bolsters the whole manuscript. It's a big overarching edit. Line editing and copy editing frequently get stuck together, but line editing is where you go through and you, one, get rid of redundancies, make sure that everything flows, the tone and the voice are consistent, the tenses are consistent, which is one of the most frustrating things as an editor and an author. And I also think this is where you take prose and perfect it. So, Timmy ran to the mailbox can become the wind flew through Timmy's hair as he hurtled toward the red mailbox. You really start to insert your imagery and scene setting. Copy editing is just kind of your standard boring, hey, let's get rid of dangling modifiers and split infinitives and those things that writers don't care about, because why would you have an editor do it? And grammar, spelling, and then proofreading. Most people think that proofreading and copy editing are the same thing, and I think it's funny because they'll hire a proofreader and then be disappointed. Proofreading really just checks basic spelling, basic grammar, and also it comes after your manuscript is formatted. So it is the final line of defense between you and your readers before you publish, really.
Cool. Awesome. And do you have a particular favorite that you enjoy doing the most?
Like genre?
Like a particular type of editing.
Oh, yeah. So line edits are probably my favorite. I love prose, and I love to try to match the author's voice with prose. It's like a mini challenge that makes me happy inside.
Yeah. And I mean, do you think that comes about because, as I said, that you're a writer yourself as well, so that, you can be an editor and a writer at the same time almost with those line edits? Whereas I suppose dev edits are more like big picture stuff. And then, further along the line, it's basically being a professional grammar Nazi,
Yeah, I think that it has to do with being a writer, because my greatest secret that I guard in my soul is that I'm not creative, which makes no sense as a writer, which is why I write historical fiction, because it's already laid out for me and I just need to make it pretty. So when somebody hands me a story, I can polish it and make it shine, but I cannot make up a story to save my life. It has been frustrating, and it is why I actually focused on nonfiction and memoir and all that in my studies, because I started to do fiction and then I realized I'm really bad at this. So if you give me something that's already there, I can make it stunning.
Yeah. It's funny because I can kind of relate to that. I mean, that's the reason why everything that I write is like very much grounded in our world, because I suck at like world building. So I look at people who do like these epic fantasies and I'm just like, how do you do that? That's too much. I don't have the kind of brain that can have that much detail going on. So if you're writing in our world, it's just so much easier to, to reflect what's already there than it is to come up with this entirely new, things like magic systems and all that, this fictional politics and all of this stuff. It just sort of blows my mind a bit.
It's true. And, people say when you're writing, know your ending.
Yeah.
And I have not once been able to make up an ending. I have tried so hard. but I love historical fiction because the ending is there.
Yeah.
All I do is try to make it a human experience.
Yeah. Well, I was reading a Stephen King short story recently, and obviously it was a fiction short story, but it was presented as though it was like, you know, just somebody telling their story. And they said in that as well, like, one of the things about this is, you know, I don't have to worry about whether it's believable or not, or whether people acted rationally, because this is just what they did. Like, and I suppose that's really true of nonfiction. And the same with the ending. It's like, you don't really have to worry about whether there's a traditional ending or whatever, because if there is an open ending, like I don't know, like true crime or something, if the book ends with and we still don't know who the killer was, like, that's just the truth. You know, you can't make up an ending for that.
Was the one that you were reading, was it the two brothers who accidentally ended the world?
I can't remember. It was in Skeleton Crew. I don't think it was that one. This was about this was a very Stephen Kingy short story as well, because it was about a writer as well. So in fact, no, I think it was about a literary agent who worked with a writer, and then it's all coming back to me now. They thought they had these like little gnome things living inside the typewriter, and they were like feeding the typewriter sugar and all this stuff.
Oh my gosh, Stephen King is a gem of my heart.
Yeah, I think this was back in his pre-sober days as well, and you can kind of tell with a lot of the stories, you're like, there's no way you'd come up with that if you were sober, you know.
Yes, I agree. I've read many Stephen King things and thought, how is this scary? But it is. Good job, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that he does really well is that, like, and a lot of horror authors do this, and actually this is what I try to do with my book Meat, which is you take something that's already scary or that people are already freaked out about. Like, that's kind of what he did with clowns. It's like people were already afraid of clowns, and he just sort of tapped into that, and then suddenly everyone's even more afraid of clowns. And so that's kind of why with me, I was like, well, nobody, like, a factory farm is already a horrible place. Nobody is going to want to just spend time in a factory farm. So half the hard work's already done, you know? And I think that's why, like, there's stuff like, funny enough, the last person I interviewed, he'd written a book called The Black Fog. And I just read The Mist by Stephen King. And I also read The Fog by James Herbert. And so we were like all talking about, why is it that that's scary? And it's like, well, people just you don't like things when you can't see, you know? It's like people are afraid of the dark as well. So you can quite easily, I don't know, it makes it easier for you to play to those fears, I suppose.
That's my favorite part. So as you know, I get scared really easy. So I don't read much horror. I do read Stephen King because I love Stephen King. I mean, The Stand is probably my favorite book in the universe. I've only finished it once. I've tried multiple times, but it is longer than the Bible. So, but I love how absurd he is and how he can terrify you with the most basic things. Like, he does have a short story. I think it's called The Finger. Where it's literally a finger in a drain. That's so ridiculous and absurd, and yet terrifying the way that he writes it. And I think that is a skill that all writers should aspire to have. Yeah,
for sure. And I suppose that comes true out of, like, across other genres as well. So, like, even with romance, for example, you kind of need to be able to take weird situations and then make them romantic in a way as well. And the same with, like, if you're a comedic writer, you need to, you know, it kind of comes down to your craft, I suppose, being able to do that. So I wondered, again, going back to editing, because you've been working I think you said over 10 years you've been working professionally as an editor, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the, I guess, the most notable or the most memorable projects that you've worked on? Obviously that you can talk about as well.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I cannot tell you in what capacity I functioned in this book, but there is a manuscript coming out by Jack Hazen, who's a Food Network personality. His manuscript is called Mind Over Batter. It's coming out in the fall of this year from Chronicle Books. And I think that was probably my favorite. I can't tell you exactly what I did, but I did spend a ton of time interviewing Jack and talking with him and hearing his life stories. And it was so rewarding because the message of that manuscript is not just, here's a recipe book. He's actually a psychologist. And so the whole purpose of his book is baking therapy. And so we worked together a lot on how can we make all of this therapeutic. And it was such a rewarding experience. I can't wait for it to come out. And I know that my mom will buy the first copy.
And did you get to, like, practice making, like, the recipes and things like that?
I cannot say.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to that because I mean, I love food. I mean, to be fair, I'm vegan, so there's only so much I can do, but I can try and
Yes.
veganize some of these recipes. But I can totally see how it's like a therapeutic thing to do as well.
And don't worry, there are quite a few vegan recipes in there, as well as
Excellent.
gluten-free.
Oh, good. Well, that's my friend Dave covered as well. My
Yeah.
dad's actually gluten free, so we went on holiday to Spain a few years ago, and it was just a nightmare trying to find restaurants in Spain that had a vegan option and a gluten free option. And a
I've
lot.
never been to Spain, but I hear it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. It was really hot as well. It was like end of November and it was boiling too.
Uh,
So talking about beautiful parts of the world, actually, and you kind of mentioned this already, but whereabouts do you live, and what is it about there that you love?
so I live in the Appalachian Mountains in America. I live in West Virginia, which is kind of the middle of them. They run from the south to the north, so we're right above the Mason-Dixon line. If any Americans are listening and might know what that is. But it's really one of the most amazing places in the world. It is the oldest mountain range in the world, believe it or not. It gets a little shorter every year because of erosion. So I like to describe it as the rolling hills of Scotland, but taller.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it looks like. And I love this area not just because of the land, which I do think is one of the most beautiful places in the world, but because of the people who are here.
Yeah.
A little American history. Essentially, when everybody came over, and there were marginalized groups like Italians and Polish and Irish, and people that essentially the traditional British didn't love.
Yeah. Sorry
Uh,
about that, by the way.
it's cool. We've done horrible things since then. It's fine. But these people couldn't really find anywhere to go in America. They couldn't find jobs that were worth having. A lot of them came over as indentured servants, which is, as Rick and Morty says, slavery with extra steps. And so when they gained their freedom, they literally just said, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Where can I go? These mountains that nobody wants to go to. And so we became this strange people who literally forsook formal education, healthcare, government support, and just said, I'm going to the mountains, leave me alone. And we created a very interesting culture around that. There's some bad parts, I'm not going to lie, but there's also a distinctive hospitality. You're welcome. You can do this yourself. We've got your back. We're all here together. And, a lot of our music came from traditional Irish music. So bluegrass has become very fun.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about your renovation project and your
Which part?
yeah, how long have we got?
20 years. I don't know. So we bought an old cabin that had been abandoned for 6 years on 15 acres of land because we wanted to be alone and we love nature. And funnily enough, my dream as a kid, as 8 years old, was to be a writer who lived in a cabin in the woods. And I don't know how I achieved it. It's very strange, but somehow the universe aligned. So this cabin has been neglected for a long time, and I have recently learned that cabins require yearly maintenance to not fall apart. And so we're essentially trying to do 6 years of maintenance at once, and it takes a very long time. We did not know what we were getting into. Winter was rough, I'm going to be honest. It was cold and drafty. And summer is hot, and there are a lot of insects, but we're working on it. We're also trying to build Airbnbs on our land. That's kind of our financial goal here. We want to do glamping, and we're going to build a hobbit house. That one's a few years down the road. We're going to build a cob house, which is made of water, straw, earth. And right now, my fiance, and I say my fiance does most of this, and I stay inside, is building a small A-frame. And so our goal is to do land conservation. Eventually, we are hoping to use the profits that we get from the Airbnb to run farm animal rescue here.
Lovely.
And so we live 6 minutes from one of the most beautiful man-made lakes in America. And actually, after we get off this call, that's where I'm heading. So we're essentially just looked at this and said we wanted to be in the woods. We wanted to be home because we're both Appalachian.
Yeah.
And we need a way to pay for it. And so, I freelance, but we also are going to use that funds to let us go play at the lake our whole lives.
Yeah. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with editor and author Cori Rupe. And this is Annette Valentine and our album reviewer, Twangling Jack Ford, with True Love.
You make me feel lucky, so much I could will, and anything and everything, whatever I begin, I've only to look me in your eyes to see the depths of security and where honesty lies, and that's how I feel with you. A smile is always on my face, and nothing has the power to take. Loving comes at its own pace. They say true love makes you like going to the moon. It's considered incomprehensible. They say true love makes you feel invincible, like going to the moon. It's considered incomprehensible. That's how I feel with you. A smile is always on my face, and nothing has the power to take. Loving comes at its own pace. They say true love makes you feel invincible, like going to the moon. It's considered incomprehensible. They say true love makes you feel invincible, like going to the moon. It's considered incomprehensible.
That was True Love by Annette Valentine and Twangling Jack Ford. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm joined here in conversation by this week's guest, who is editor and author Cori Rupe.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I suppose it's more of what do you call it? Like, I can't remember the term for it now, but it's like a more kind of passive type of income. So once you've got the Airbnbs and things set up, you know, you've kind of done the work up front, whereas with freelancing, it's just kind of constantly you need to put the hours in if you want to get paid, you know?
Theoretically, yes. There is a lot of maintenance. We recently got a lawnmower, which makes no sense because we've been here for 6 months and we just lived in the weeds. And so my poor fiance has been mowing for like a week, and we're starting to realize that we could do this for 5 hours every day and continuously have to do it, because we got to maintain the trails and that kind of stuff. So we're learning. We're mostly bumbling.
Yeah,
but we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it's fun along the way. I mean, lots of hard work. But that reminds me as well of that story. I can't remember which bridge it is, but there's that bridge where it's constantly being repainted, because as soon as the workers get to the end of the bridge, they have to start again and like start from the paint in the beginning again.
I have not heard of that bridge, but it sounds like my life.
I'm sure it's like, I think it might be like the Sydney Harbour Bridge or something like that. It's one of the massive bridges anyway. But yeah. Okay, so I want to chat to you a bit about your own writing as well. Can you tell us anything about what you're working on?
Yeah, so I've given my poetry a little bit of a break right now because I am consumed with this historical fiction. Right now, I am writing about the Buffalo Creek flood disaster, which happened in 1972 in West Virginia. And the gist is, as much as Appalachians are wonderful people, we have a lot of resources on our land. And so traditionally, as things go, big corporations like to come in and say, I'll take the resources, screw the people, who cares? And then when we're done, we'll leave and y'all will survive or you won't. West Virginia is actually filled with abandoned coal towns. There are tons of ghost towns around here because once the coal dried up, they just left.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things about coal company history is that they have traditionally not cared at all about the safety or the well-being of their workers. You'll hear about things like black lung, which still exist, which is essentially a debilitating respiratory disease caused by coal mining.
Yeah.
But this is because this book and this event happened because they built a dam. When you mine for coal, you have to build dams because you have to process the coal and wash it. And what you end up with is a slurry. It's this really gross black water that you can't use for anything, and you just have to kind of find some place to stick it and leave it forever. You can sort of filter it out through many, many steps and processes, but traditionally they don't care to do so. What happened here in this town called, it's Buffalo Creek Holler, you can say hollow if you like, but in West Virginia it's holler, is they did not engineer their dam. They literally just took coal byproduct, dumped it, compacted it, and said, that'll do. And one thing about West Virginia is that there's very little flat land, so everything is a ridge or a holler. And so this coal dam sat atop a 17-mile stretch of 5,000 homes and residents. And so one day it started to rain ferociously for about a week and a half. There's no real construction or engineering into this dam, so the residents expected that it might break, at which point it would flood 17 miles of homes. And so this had been threatened before. A lot of people said, you know what, we hear about it all the time, it never happens. It did happen. And I think a little over 100 people died, 4,000 people were homeless, a 50-foot wall of water just bounced back and forth between the mountains. And when I read this story, I could not put it down. I mean, I thought I need to write about it, but I don't have time, so I put it away. And then a couple weeks later, it came back in my head, and I thought I don't have time, so I put it away. And I did this for a couple of months until I was like, fine. And so when I opened the next book that I was going to research, I saw that it actually happened the day my mother was born.
Okay. Yeah.
And I said, okay, fine, universe, I will
Yeah.
write the book. You know. But the coal companies claimed that it was an act of God and that they had no responsibility. And so there was this huge lawsuit that came after it. And I'm sad to say that things are not much better these days. Lawsuits have been enacted, but you know, there's lobbying, there's money, and where money goes, the interests of humans usually are not top priority. So there have not been any floods in Appalachia in a while, but there were dozens in a span of a decade or two, and they were all pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see how the coal company just said it's not our problem at all, when really it was
definitely
100% negligence.
Yeah.
And a lot of people died, families were washed away.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because actually the police were alerted to go evacuate people. And as they were going to do so, a coal company executive stopped and said, oh, we fixed it. And so many people died that didn't have to, because again, the coal company interfered twice.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of interesting because it has, as you say, it hasn't really changed. Like, just in general, there's similar stuff happens, maybe not with the coal industry, but I mean, it was making me think of like what happened in Flint, Michigan with the water, for example. And it's like, it keeps happening, you know, and I'm sure throughout our lifetimes, it will continue to keep happening as well. But, you know, I think it's kind of interesting as well as a project, because actually it's like it's a fascinating story and it's a true story, but also it's like a sort of almost like a social good project as well. Like, people need to know that this happened.
That's exactly why I kept thinking, nobody's read these books. I mean, a few people have, but they're wasting away in obscurity in my library. People in Appalachia don't know this happened. And so I thought I've got to do it. And so I'm writing a historical fiction version of it that will have two perspectives, two-person point of view. I have not decided who my hero is yet. I'm trying to get out of the research phase, but I'm stuck with so many manuscripts on my plate right now that I don't have much time for research.
Yeah.
But I think that it needs to be told, and my goal is just for anybody to hear it and go, I can't believe that we allow this, because we,
Yeah.
as you said, we do still allow this.
Yeah.
I mean, the safety of the public has never been a huge concern when money is involved. And the fact that this company had the sheer gall to say it's not our fault, it was an act of God, infuriates me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially because you know, they could have spent the money to actually do the job properly. It's just that's going to cut into their
Yes.
profits, so they didn't. And it's almost a
Exactly.
case of like out of sight, out of mind. So I want to get back to editing a little bit.
Mhm.
And I guess one of the things I want to know about is like, what are some of the things that you look out for in a first round of edits, or kind of conversely, what is the sign of a badly edited novel? Like, what are the things you would point to and say, well, that needs to be fixed?
I think the most obvious glaring ones that I think most people could pick up on is repetitive words. So, I mean, if you say unique 4 times in a paragraph, that's not creative writing, that is just writing. That's a first draft. That's where you need to go in and fix your copy. I do think that structure is one of the things that most people struggle with. And I'm not going to lie, even I, as an editor, struggle with it. It's the hardest part for me. I actually learned to structurally edit by printing out my entire book, lining it up in my school hallway, and just shifting, at 3 a.m. with coffee. So it's difficult for me to do it on a computer screen. I don't print out every manuscript because I like trees.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard even for a writer to structure their manuscript. That's why I'm such a I really recommend outlines, and I know pantsers hate them. And it is my job as an editor to fix it when a pantser goes off and makes a huge structural mess. So I'd say those are the 2 most easy to spot things. And then, like I said, I think my true specialty lies with creating human experience within books. It's easy, especially for beginner authors, to look over that because they go, I got a story out, I got it out, here's what happened, point A, point B, point C, cool, good. When really, I think readers are inherently accidentally editors because they know when they're bored. It's easy to know when you're bored. And if I cannot taste the salt on your tongue at the beach, then why am I standing with you? And that's what I try really hard to fix for my clients.
Yeah. And that point there as well about readers kind of being inherently editors. I mean, that's why people work with beta readers as well, is that you give the book to somebody to read and they'll tell you if there's a problem with it. And sometimes it is something that you've missed out on as well. And I think the other thing as well with I guess like the idea of when you're an author, you kind of make the mistake of assuming that everybody else knows what you know. So you could very easily do this with your book, is that you could, because you've read whatever, like a dozen different books about what happened. It's very easy to then forget, well, actually, the person reading this isn't going to know these details. They're not going to know what it was like inside a coal mine. They're not going to know what it smelled like. They're not going to know, again, what it's like to have, I can't remember what you called it now, but the lung condition that you get. They're not going to know. Lung. Yeah, they're not going to know, like, what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night unable to breathe because you spent too much time down a coal mine. And so it's all of this stuff kind of helps to bring it to life.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that all writing is about the human experience, believe it or not. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all about what it means to exist, live, and feel. Even nonfiction how-to guides, they're solving a problem because you feel an issue. And so if I can't feel what the author intends me to feel, or what the author felt, or what the author wants their character to be feeling, then I don't think that it's as shiny as it could be.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay. Pretty much the last question, because we're running out of time, is also I only have so much time to fill on the radio as well. So there's that as well.
Gotcha.
But my traditional end question is, what's next for you, and where can people go to find out more?
Yeah, so what's next for me is someday I'm going to come out from underneath this pile of editing manuscripts, maybe, and I'm going to finish my Buffalo Creek disaster. At that point, I'm going to probably look into other disasters in Appalachia that were due to negligence, or other ways that Appalachians as a general people have been used by corporations, and continue that vein because it's something I'm very passionate about. My fiance and I are actually researching and trying to co-write some fiction books together. Neither of us have fiction experience, so that should be fun. or horrible. We'll see.
One or the other. There's no
One or the
middle
other.
ground.
Yeah. And if people want to come find me, I have my editing business. We also do other things like helping to publish, formatting, covers, whatever, is What Now Writing. You can find us at www.whatnowwriting.com. And you can find me on Instagram at CYRWrites, WRITES. I'm not super good at social media, which I know Dane needs to help me with because I really need to be, but that's really my most consistent presence online. And if you want to look at some of my recent work, I've recently been in Lupercalia Press and Screen Door Review. Those both have been some of my poetry have been in there.
Cool. I was going to say your Instagram anyway is a great place to go for people who want to sort of visualize the part of the world you live in, because it's, you know, it's almost like watching, I don't know, looking like a National Geographic, like nature photographer's page or something. It's great.
And thank you.
And I wanted to ask actually just on that subject, you know, with your poetry, will you be publishing a poetry collection eventually?
Maybe eventually. I'm not sure. My poetry is all over the place,
Yeah.
so it does not quite have a thematic feel right now. Maybe someday. I'm never going to say never to anything because I am only almost 30, so I've got plenty of time to find out more stuff.
Yeah, you're still at that point where you're like a young up and coming writer. So,
oh, thank you. I like to hear myself referred to as young. It's nice.
I'm trying to claim it, but because I was thinking, well, it was when I turned 30, I was like, I'm no longer an up and coming writer. I'm now just a writer.
I've only got 4 months until I turn 30.
And anyway, we're not old writers yet, so we've got plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep telling myself that.
Big thank you to Cori for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Same Street by Altered Mindset.
Downtrodden and beat, always on your feet. sides of the same street, downtrodden and beat, always on your feet. We will never meet. Two sides of the same street.
Lately I've been feeling kinda low about love. Lately I've been feeling like it's not enough. What happened to the buzz when we used to touch? Where did the magic go that we could love? So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Let your love wash over me, it's so clear to see. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Oh, I don't wanna let go of everything we've got. Oh, I don't wanna be the one to say goodbye. But what happened to the buzz when we used to touch? Where did the magic go that we could love? So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Let your love wash over me, it's so clear to see. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer, closer. So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Let your love wash over me, it's so clear to see. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart.
That was To the River by Lewis Branch, and before that we had Same Street by Altered Mindset. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time to head over to the Ilk Shed for this week's album review, courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford. Over to Twangling Jack.
Suede, Dogman Star. I think the 90s may have been the sweet spot for rock music. Technology had improved massively, yet production had yet to become overproduction. The necessity of perfection, the playing to the click, the cut and paste of Pro Tools and the tyranny of auto-tune were yet to be approved by focus groups. I mostly remember Suede as a band of pretty boys making catchy singles which seemed to be heavily influenced by Bowie's Ziggy Glam period. I found this CD in the Cancer Research charity shop in Wickham for £1.50, and it must be an American copy because the band are credited as London Suede. Dogman Star was their second album and the last with their legendary founding guitarist Bernard Butler. If their first album was the start of Britpop, this was them moving on. It is like their Dark Side of the Moon. In the 90s we had guitarists like Butler and Greenwood and Coxon, who had stood on the shoulders of giants and were making new sounds. And there were producers who were prepared to overpower sweet songs with crunchy, edgy guitar fills, making the whole thing a little bit more nasty. On the album, Butler is very much to the fore with outbursts of blues, psychedelia and his trademark melodic lines. Brett Anderson looks like a catalogue model, but he sings like a lad insane. And together they look for life on Mars with some big piano ballads. It all ends in a great big crooning, orchestrated Walker Brothers No Regrets reunion epic finale. They cover a lot of ground, yet still sound of London. Suede, Dogman Star.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Cori Rupe for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain @wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s to share, and potential guests for the show. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound. You should be able to find us. And we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, and we're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Without My Addiction with Already Broken. I'll chat to you next week.